To any 911 call operators, what is the funniest 911 call you've ever had? My kid worked for animal control. We are eating dinner and 911 dispatch calls him. Some panicked lady had called 911 about an owl in a tree that couldn't fly. It had been sitting in the tree for a half hour not moving. Of course it was just before dusk and the owl was just waiting for dark so it could go hunt for dinner. Then there was the call about the one-legged duck at the park. Edit to add, he actually went to the park to make sure the duck wasn't injured but realized after 15 minutes how silly he looked chasing after this one-legged duck that was outrunning him. In Michigan we get hotels that put plastic swans with movable heads on their grass area to keep the Canadian geese away. Swans are really mean birds. Our ACOs get at least one call a day about those poor swans who have been there for days and haven't moved. Also had a resident call the ACO about a dead animal in his yard. Gets out there, typical suburban yard, mulch edging all the way around the fence, decorative plants here and there. Very uncluttered and neat, and small. He pointed to the dead animal and told her to take care of it. She walked over and didn't see anything. He called her an idiot and told her it was right in front of her. She picked up a decorative rock and turned around and said this. He said, "Of course, what are you, some kind of moron?" She took it to him telling him we're not allowed to dispose of dead wildlife and he has to put it in his trash can, then laid the rock on the table in front of him. He called her an ass and slammed the door. A guy calls from a payphone to complain that he has a pipe wrench stuck up his butt and he needed an ambulance. He gave his location as the corner where the payphone was located. I asked him if he could tell me his appearance so I could be sure the medics could find him. His response, "Look dude, I'll be the only guy on the corner with a pipe wrench in his butt." I couldn't argue with that. I called 911 about 2 cows running around on a street by my parents' neighborhood. 911 operator asked me to describe the animals and I said, "Lady, I promise you they're the only 2 cows running down the street right here." Then one got hit by a jeep and I had to clarify that there was now only 1 cow running down the street. Not 911 but worked for animal control dispatch in a tourist town during my senior year in high school. Got a call from a lady that had called 911 previously and was told to call our number. Picked up the phone to what sounded like a whole car of very panicked people all yelling at once. After asking what was wrong several times, I finally heard someone yell, "A deer. There's a deer in somebody's yard, y'all gotta come pick it up." Thinking it was a dead deer / roadkill, I said an animal control officer would come pick up the body soon. And a kid in the background starts bawling saying the officer was gonna kill it, so I paused for a second and asked, "Is the deer alive? What is it doing?" Someone far away from the phone yelled, "It's just sitting there in the yard." So I said, "Yeah, this is Texas. He lives there. Just don't touch him or get too close and y'all will be okay." Literally not even 5 minutes later we got a call from another tourist about a deer chasing a family after they tried to take a selfie with it. To this day I'm still not sure if it was the same family, but wow. I hope it was. My mom was a 911 operator in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 80s and 90s. I asked her to tell me a story to pass along, so here it is. I got a 911 call and I couldn't understand the caller. He was slurring his words. I knew he was calling from a bar, so I asked if he'd been drinking, and after asking many times I was able to determine that he wanted the police, not an ambulance. He wanted to file assault charges because a woman pulled his tongue. I asked, "How was she able to pull your tongue?" And he said, "Because I stuck it out at her." I had to keep muting the call because I was laughing so hard. Apparently my supervisor went on to play this call in seminars for years and always got a ton of laughter. I used to do overnight security, and have had to call 911 several times. My favorite was a gentleman who was obviously on something, jittery, touching his face a lot, couldn't sit still. He tried to break into a house next to our campus. So I dialed 911 right then. As I'm giving them a description of what he is wearing, he starts stripping his clothes off, running across our campus. So I have to tell the 911 operator, yeah, he is butt naked in the middle of street, laying down. I think he's doing the worm. We lost the guy on cameras, no clue where he is. 5 cop cars show up and they round up the only guy in our area with no shoes or a shirt. We went outside to give the cops a statement, and the guy is trying to convince the police that he is the one who called them to report someone stealing his shoes. The cops don't buy it for a second. But they let him go, and he just runs off into the night. Barefoot, no shirt. At a long-term care facility I worked at, one of our residents called 911 with the phone in her room because she didn't get ketchup with her lunch. Not kidding. The sheriff's office called back to let the nurses know what she'd done while I was standing right there. I've never laughed so hard at work. ER nurse here. I've had multiple patients call 911 from inside the ER for various reasons, slights, and deficiencies, imagined and real. Examples: gentleman calls 911 from a room in the ER to tell the dispatcher that the doctor didn't believe his story about how the bottle of shampoo ended up in his rectum. He reported feeling, quote, disrespected. An elderly, very confused woman called the police to report that we'd removed her bobby pins, thus letting her hair down, in the course of preparing her for a CT scan of her head. Now her hair was a mess. An individual well known to my institution would regularly call 911 to request ambulance transport from the lobby of the ER if directed there for triage rather than being taken directly to a room. He'd also call 911 and request an ambulance to retrieve him as soon as he was discharged. Usually, to take him to a different hospital. A very drunk woman called 911 from the bathroom of the ER to report being kidnapped from the party she'd been attending. Kidnapped by EMS. Because she'd fallen into a window and sliced her scalp open. My favorite. 5. Pain management is a tricky situation, particularly with people who have a recorded history within my hospital system of frequent visits and aggressive medication-seeking behaviors. I'm not talking about actual chronic pain patients, I'm talking about people who legitimately come to the ER to get that one drug. It starts with D, I forget what it is, but my boyfriend said it's the only thing that helps this kind of pain. Dilaudid. It's always Dilaudid. Anyway. A patient had wheedled and cajoled and tried to get more pain medication from one of our doctors. If there's no diagnosable problem, it's often sticky territory to keep getting IV opioids for pain. So she was going to be discharged. She jammed the door to the exam room shut by stuffing coins in the door frame and barricading the stretcher against the door, and proceeded to rip the sharps container off the wall. Nurses sometimes put empty or partially empty medication vials in the in-room sharps containers. Before the security personnel could enter the room, she'd called 911 herself, complaining that staff's lack of care had led her to this event and she'd gotten a needle stick and wanted to press charges. Not an operator, but one time I went to a local library to do work as my home was filled with loud guests. I'm there for a couple hours and I saw I had 25 minutes left. So I packed all my stuff up and brought it to the bathroom so I could take a shit, not leave my stuff unattended, and they immediately just leave. Y'all, they locked me in. The librarians thought I left. The whole place was empty and dark. I walked right out the front door, which was locked, and triggered the alarm. Now, not to throw race into it, but I'm a big Latino man in a very white and upper class part of my state. So there was a real sense of fear I had, lol. I didn't want to be caught driving away from the scene in case any Karens were peeping out their windows. I had to call the cops on myself and explain that I got locked in the library while taking a shit and the operator is dying. Cops show up and one of them goes, "So you like breaking in and taking shits, huh?" I went white as a ghost and started immediately bumbling my words. They brought the whole department out because they thought it was the funniest shit. Thankfully they were cool and just laughed at my dumb ass. Please like, comment, and subscribe.